You're watching Face to Face. I'm your host, Tim Vince, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Revd Noelle Coe. And
Hello.
it's as opposed to Rev TV. You are Reverend with a D.
That's right.
Noelle, and you're Noelle with an E.
Yes, well, an extra L on an E, actually.
Exactly. Yeah, of course, I know. Now, so it's great that you've come, and you're going to talk about the chaplaincy you work with and lead at Guildford Town Centre Chaplaincy.
Chaplaincy.
So just tell me a little of what the work is in Guildford Town Centre and the surroundings.
Okay. Well, I came to the chaplaincy about 6 years ago. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I've always had a heart for people, especially those on the edges. We always make this assumption people are going to walk into church if we provide this, and this. But a lot of people, it's just not on the radar.
Yeah.
And in churches, we often provide for our own people quite well. There's a support network. But out in the world, there's not always that same support network.
That's right.
So 16 years ago in Guildford, the churches, and that's across all the denominations, non-denominational, a complete mix, came together and said, we can do better. Maybe there's something we can do as a gift to Guildford, which is quite amazing.
Yeah.
And they came up with the idea of the Town Centre Chaplaincy, and it started with one chaplain.
Amazing.
And he did an amazing job and got it off the ground and made connections. And then from that, Street Angels started.
Amazing.
Where we go out every Friday and Saturday night. We start about 10:30 at night and go through to 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. I do go out with them.
Yeah.
I just don't stand in the background.
And do you go with the dog collar or with a kind of a hoodie, or
Yes, we all have a uniform, and it's very. People recognise it because we've been going out for nearly 16 years into Guildford at night time. It's got an angel on it because there's an angel on the top of Guildford Cathedral. So we kind of linked it with that, and obviously Street Angels as a name.
Yeah.
And so I wear the same uniform as everyone that is working on the team. Yeah. Normally there's a team of 6 of us that go out, and we're in pairs.
Brilliant.
The volunteers come right from across the churches, and also not from churches, people with no Christian background, but see what we're doing and say, can we get involved? So we always make it clear that we are a charity that is founded on the Christian faith, that we will pray. So when we go out, we always pray before we go out. We always pray at the end of the evening, 4 in the morning. That's part of our DNA, if you like.
Now, the interesting thing is, Noelle, people think of Guildford. It's a kind of leafy, suburban, sort of pad for the rich. But you're working with all sorts of, as part of the projects that you're working with, social needs in addition to the night economy, so to speak.
That's right.
Just explain a little bit of how that can be in a place where probably more billionaires live than anywhere else in Britain.
I mean, it is a very beautiful part of the country, and yet there is the very rich, and it's almost there's a divide, and then there's people that are really struggling. We have homelessness, like in many areas of the country. We have people that are really on the edges, where they can sort of tip over into homelessness, all sorts of things, social problems. We were chatting a bit earlier, weren't we, and saying that the thing is, if you're living in close proximity to each other, so I've worked in outer city council estates, inner city, you often, the problems are obvious because we kind of live those problems together because you can't hide it. Somewhere like Guildford, many of the problems are hidden, but there's still very much the need. And I think COVID has brought that a little bit to a greater recognition.
Can I drill in on the issue of poverty, because there, my parents, or my mum grew up in a poor area in the north of England, but there was never a social problem, if you know what I mean, that was accompanied to it. But it seems like today there is, and it's like hand in glove that people from these neighbourhoods are going to have all of a list of social challenges, which you're obviously addressing. Why is that today? Why has that come about in the modern world?
I think it's the way we live our lives in many ways, that some of our goals in life are very materialistic, self-centred, if you like. I'll be outspoken on that. We don't have time for community. We don't have time to stop and listen. We don't have time to know who our neighbour is. I tend to be one of these awful people. If I go out with my children, they're now grown up in their 20s, but I'll stop and chat to anybody and they're like, oh, for goodness sake, Mum, you know, what are you doing? But I think actually it's really important, and that's something as Christians, in a way, we have a chaplaincy that we can go out just where we are and have time for people. Remember important things, the things that are important to other people.
Because most people in the caring professions, as it were, are completely overworked.
Totally.
So they don't have the time that one would hope you have.
Well, it's interesting.
Just explain some of that,
Yes. Well, we have two other projects besides Street Angels that we oversee. The other is Community Angels, and this is a befriending service. Everyone that is a community angel is a volunteer. Again, we have Christians working alongside non-Christians, and that works really well. We do the training, safeguarding, DBS, all the proper, have everything properly in place. And then we have people that are referred to us for all kinds of reasons. It can be mental health issues, it can be domestic violence, it can be bereavement, it can be health issues that have isolated them, and they're extremely isolated. So we get referrals from police, from GPs, from social services, all kinds of agencies, and we go and visit them, see whether we can help them to maybe improve their lives a little bit by being a friend, make some reconnections or make new connections. And our volunteers then go in for 6 months on a weekly basis as a friend. So no big agenda, because often if you get into the system, whatever that system may be, you feel that there's certain goals you've got to reach and do and everything. But actually just having someone alongside you.
And also in the medical profession, this is my caricature only from my own experience, but you know, there's a lot of bureaucracy. They've got to fill out all the forms. I remember when my little boy bumped his chin, you know, I went into the hospital and there was no interest in his injury. It was filling out the forms
first, yes.
You know, what's he got to do with it? And so, you know, you do get the sense that the whatever government regulations are requiring, you know, the medical profession to record everything, but missing out on what they need, as it were.
Well, we're one of the few agencies that go into people's homes now.
Wow.
And it's not until you go into people's homes that you really get a sense of where they're at and how you can possibly make some improvements for them. So we can all keep up. You can be on the telephone and you can listen to someone and they can sound pretty together. And then you go to their home, you think, oh my word, it just doesn't match up. You really do need help.
And you do need that kind level and depth of contact, because you hear of these horror stories where a child, you know, is abused or you know or dies, and the social worker's gone in again, who's very busy, and they say, oh well, you know, they're not feeling so well today, when they're bruised all over. And I suppose it's a really important service you're doing.
Yes,
in the country,
I think it's really vital. I mean, one of our problems, if you like, is that there's a huge demand for it and we need more volunteers to get out there. We currently, for the Community Angels, we've got about 50 volunteers and it's not enough. It's just not enough. And yet what it costs any one person is perhaps 1 or 2 hours a week out of your timetable. So it's not a huge ask, and you could just support someone for 6 months and not support anyone after that, you know, sort of thing. I can do this once.
Okay. That's good. So
it's not unmanageable.
Just another general point. When David Cameron came in as Prime Minister, his big idea was called the Big Society.
Yes.
And then there was a chap called Nat Way who did some of the analysis on the Big Society, and they discovered that sort of trying to measure the economic benefits of volunteer missions like yours. And they discovered, if we didn't know already, that sort of 90% came from the church and it was kind of off the scale in terms of voluntary supports, which is a good thing. But the sad thing is that the society can't, they especially not with the cost of living issues, and, you know, government economic problems. They can't cope.
No, no. Well, certainly when I came into Guildford, I kind of went on all the churches' websites because obviously I work for the churches and it's good to know a little bit about them. And I was amazed at the tremendous work that they do, all of them. Yeah. And it does make a huge difference. Just before COVID, with the chaplaincy, because it was one of the things that I noticed was lots of churches were doing stuff for the homeless, which is great, but there was no joined up thinking. And so you'd find someone...
So that's very much what your chaplaincy is. It's joining all the dots up.
I try to. So I organised a forum for the Faith Community Forum at the council offices, and we sort of found out what is actually helpful and what isn't helpful, which is a good thing from different, you know, from police, from hosts who sort of work with the homeless and all sorts of agencies, and then how we could work better together. And what it meant was that then when COVID hit, we knew where the resources were to support the work and how to appropriately do that, rather than just hope for the best.
Aren't you also sort of heading up a business forum as well, or chairing? I mean, how do you get into that? Isn't it important to know?
I have a great job. Don't tell my trustees that.
No, okay.
But I absolutely love my job, and so does, there's 4 of us that work in the office, and we all work part-time. We're not full-time, but we get involved in everything. So yes, I head up the Guildford Business Forum.
Brilliant.
I have no idea, really. Someone said they needed a new chair.
But do you say to all these business leaders, store up for yourselves, you know, treasures in heaven?
I do. Well, they know exactly where I'm coming from, and they know the work that I'm involved in, and I make it my business to get round the different business people, round the council, round the university, round the nightclubs. I get involved. I'm also involved in Pub Watch, which is all the venues, late night venues, nighttime economy.
Amazing.
And so they know I'm around, they know what I stand for. But what I have brought in, but don't tell them because they haven't realised that, is...
Well, don't send them a link to this programme. Just
you mean you're not going to cut this bit?
No, we don't cut anything. Carry on. Tell me whatever you...
I've kind of sneaked in some Christian little bits into the business forum. Only sort of like perhaps 10 minutes. But like last time I got the lady who heads up actually from my own charity, heads up the volunteer chaplains, because a lot of our chaplains, which is our 3rd projects, go into businesses. So I thought it'd be good for them to know what it was. We don't go to preach.
No, but just the fact that you're there, and not everyone will wear a dog collar, but people, you know, at least people know where you're coming from. And Guildford is quite a, let's say, a Christian. I mean, we've almost said Bible Belt, but there's a lot of churches, so you know, it wouldn't be surprising to find people from the churches also working in the businesses.
That's right.
Yeah, so.
Well, yes, certainly with our 3rd project, which is volunteer chaplains, again, people give their time voluntarily. We go into all kinds of places. We have actually 2 of our volunteers, Bob and Jean. I know they won't mind me saying their names, and they are amazing. Jean is, I think, I shouldn't say this on camera, early 90s. I say it quietly.
Okay, no, that's right.
But she's on fire. She's on fire for God. And, you know, you spend time with her and you feel like you've been in God's presence. And the same with Bob. And they go into a retirement complex, and they've really built up community there, and also people can book and have one-to-one meetings with them as chaplains. So they go in, the pair of them, and they've been such a blessing. So when people sort of say, oh, I've got to retirement age, now I'm not doing anything, actually look at some of these saints, they're really
in the saddle, as it were, riding
totally, and nothing's going to get them out of that saddle.
And, okay, so now I want to dig into what is your motivation. You've mentioned their motivation. How did you come to faith that leads to you sitting here with me and giving us a good, wonderful insight into your work? What was it that sort of led you on the journey of faith?
I think probably a praying mother. When I was born, she was very ill and there was an expectation she might not survive.
Right.
So when I was a month old, somehow she got up out of bed and brought me to church and got me baptised.
Wow.
Because she just felt that whatever happens, she wanted to give me to God.
Yeah. Wow.
At that time, my dad was not a churchgoer.
That's interesting.
And but he was a
told
lovely
me
man.
that he because we had a little chat beforehand,
Yes.
he ended up as a Pentecostal pastor.
Yes,
Interesting.
I know. Well, he came from a family where the only time you go to church was funerals, weddings, and maybe baptisms.
Yeah.
But that was it. No,
Yeah.
it was just a strange thing. But she really felt that she committed me to God at that moment. She did survive, you'll be pleased to know. And, she's always been a very passionate Christian. And then my dad, who is very supportive, kept coming along to church. And as you say, he ended up as a Pentecostal pastor, which was a bit of a shock.
I'll just tell you a little personal one from me. I was born in Kingston Hospital on Christmas Day,
Christmas
1964. And the nurse was a Christian, and she gave my mum a Bible.
Wow.
And looked at me and said, well, he'll either be a preacher or a politician. I'm a little bit of a pseudo on both, but it's amazing. Things can be said, and they do have some spiritual impact. That's lovely.
So that was kind of the start of my Christian
that's
life,
amazing.
really. So there was no hope for me, as you realise. And at the age of 12, I made a commitment for myself and just thought, you know what, I don't want to live any other life than this.
Wonderful.
Now, I'm not saying life was all straightforward after that.
No, it gets more difficult.
Because it's hard actually being a Christian. That's a reality.
Yeah.
It's not an easy step. Although it's a free gift,
correct.
it costs everything.
Yeah, that's right. As we know, through church histories, those that have been fully committed have often, suffered a lot.
Yes.
In fact, it's probably a missing part of the Christian gospel message in a lot of modern churches is as it were, the fellowship of his sufferings. There is an element of God being present, with the down and out. We know the Lord obviously had a lot of time for people who were the outcasts of society, so something deeper going on.
Yes, and I think that's important to say as well.
Yeah.
And so, so that sort of started my journey. And I've just always been passionate about my Christian faith. I couldn't imagine not having God in my life. It's part of who I am now, part of my DNA, if you like.
So anyway, you're based in Guildford, but the country as a whole is quite secular, isn't it?
Yes.
Government legislation secular, reference points are all secular now, and yet we know deep down that there's something more to life than materialism and consumerism.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, conversations I'm having with people, because you mentioned earlier, are we becoming more secular? Are we being less Christian?
Yeah.
But I actually think people may be thinking deeper about some of these things. Yeah. And certainly when I've gone out and I'm chatting with people, they really want to know. They really want to know. I mean, there's only ever been one time when I've said to someone, could I say a prayer for you, that they've said no. Yeah. But most people, even people that told me they're confirmed atheists, agnostics, the rest, when push comes to shove, they go, actually, could you say a prayer? Yeah.
That's good.
Which is always interesting.
I saw there's one of these channels out there called Babylon B, and they were interviewing Elon Musk.
Right.
And they said, well, we're a Christian ministry, so how about, you giving your heart to the Lord? And he gave a good answer, and he basically said, well, if Jesus is in the business of saving people, I want some of that, he said.
Oh, really?
So, yes.
Wow.
So they said, oh, well, we'll notch you up then, as a convert. But, we're a Christian country, we've got the sort of Christian constitution and all that, and yet it's sort of honoured more in the breach than the observance, and yet there is this undercurrent of knowing what's right and wrong.
Yes.
And
Yes.
And so you have got a point of contact with people. By the way, you said you're a good listener, so I can keep talking.
It's all right, I can talk as well, I'll interrupt.
But no, the point is that, yeah, people, they're not completely illiterate, as it were.
No.
So if you're talking about spiritual things, people, if you're allowed to, because you've got to be careful
Yes,
as
you
well,
do have
don't
to
you?
be sensitive. And actually, with all the work that we do, we don't go out to preach in
No.
any of our things
No.
because we're going out to people that are potentially vulnerable
That's
at
right.
difficult times in their lives.
Yeah.
And I would not like someone to sort of think, oh, I can't go and speak to that person
Because they're going to get me.
because
Yeah,
they're going to get me.
yeah,
And there's a price to pay almost for it. I want
That's
it to be
right.
a free gift.
Yeah.
And that's the whole chaplaincy's ethos, is
Yeah.
sort of non-judgmental, loving, kind, all those sort of qualities.
yeah,
It's not about anything other than being present,
yeah.
which is very powerful.
That's right, and absolutely. You mentioned how the professions like GP surgeries, they welcome you in there. And just tell us a little of how that works, because
Yes.
I've never seen a chaplain in my
GP surgery.
but,
If you tell me which one, I'll go
yeah,
and have a
no.
word with them.
Well, ours actually has some Christian GPs in there, and it's called Bethesda, but
Right,
it's
oh,
quite a
right.
nice name for a GP surgery. But yeah, I'm just interested in patients often don't have time, doctors don't have time. How
does it work?
In other words, what are you doing here? You're in the way. How do you actually get into
Yes.
signing in, as it were?
Well, it's interesting. I think some of it is that we've been in Guildford for 16 years. We've been seen to be reliable. We've been seen to be constant in the work that we have done.
Yeah.
And so as we look at establishing chaplaincies, not everyone is a paid chaplain like myself.
Yeah.
I've done ordination training, things like that.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have done that.
Yeah.
I think chaplains can be the people that come alongside people in all kinds of walks of life and have that experience. So one of the sort of chaplaincy areas that we found has been very receptive is GP surgeries. As you said earlier, they're often very overwhelmed. They don't have the time to stop and talk with people. And a lot of people are dealing with loss. It could be bereavement, it could be loss of mobility, it could be loss of home, income, all kinds of things like that. So we're in talks with GP chaplains, and we set it all up properly. And then our chaplains go in. Normally they give 3 or 4 hours a week. So they go in for a session, and the GPs themselves actually refer patients to our chaplains for 50-minute appointments, and it's a safe place to be listened to.
Excellent.
We're not there to guide people or anything like that. We're not counsellors. We're there to listen to people, to give them a space where they can actually be honest, because they don't need to see our chaplains ever again, so they can be totally honest, maybe feel they can speak out in a way they can't with their family and friends, because often people with illnesses and all sorts of things actually try and protect those around them, whereas this is a safe space. And it's been tremendous. So we've got 3 chaplains up and running, and we've got another 3 about to start, so that'll be 6 in GP surgeries, because the GPs are seeing that for some people, just having that time, they don't need to see the GP again. They've had the time that they just really needed.
And the mental health challenges, I think most families know someone in their wider family, and I've had close family members who have been challenged by it. And the government say that we're not here to talk politics, but yes, they're going to invest in mental health care, but they don't, do they? So there is a real need out there.
And I think sometimes you just need face-to-face communication.
Yes.
You go online, they say, well, go on this online course.
Exactly.
It can give you some tools, but it's not the same as a real human being being there.
Yeah.
So that is a challenge.
Okay, last few minutes, just talking generally, because I'm a big picture person. You've mentioned about the lack of personal contact. Isn't that the fundamental problem that we've got in the modern world?
I think so.
Yeah.
And having time for people.
Yeah.
I mean, if each of us consciously thought, I'll give an hour a week just to listen to someone or just be purposeful in that, I actually think the best work I do is sitting and listening to people, and often I don't give it enough time myself. So it is a challenge.
And the other thing that comes to mind is I've been privileged to, I grew up in a large family. We always had our meals together. I've got children now in the 20s. We always have our meals together. You know, mother, father, you know, traditional family units. I'm not representative of the country anymore, but I know what a blessing it is to just have that family contact and, you know.
Yes, at the moment I'm living in a multi-generational house, I've been told.
Okay, yes.
My 3 children in their 20s will come back because they can save money living at home.
Oh, that's lovely. That's
but you're
good.
never lonely.
No, exactly.
Because there's always someone there, and
Yeah.
a lot of people just don't have that. So it's something to celebrate, I think.
And you mentioned about your mother praying for you. I grew up in a home where there was prayer, always prayer at meal times. And so that's like our family tradition. And I think folks are missing out if they don't have a spiritual dimension.
I do.
Because there's no explanation for the problems that we're facing often.
No. Or support, really.
Yeah.
I just don't know, I genuinely don't know how some people get through some of the challenges they have to cope with without support, without God.
Yes.
I really don't.
And if the education system is, you know, promise of money, well-being, future career, and that isn't delivered, the Christian message isn't money, you know, and success. It is something much, much deeper and
much
more substantial.
Indeed, which is that's why I love the work that I do.
Yeah.
It's just a huge privilege
Yeah.
to be able to bring good news, which is what
Yeah.
we've been told to do
Yeah.
in so many circumstances.
So if I come to Guildford Town Centre, will I bump into one of your town centre chaplains?
There is a possibility,
Yes.
certainly, and especially if you come nightclubbing nights.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I'm often, you know, as Revd TV viewers know, I'm always out on the, you know, town, you know,
Yes.
the night economy. I try and get to bed by 10 if I can. So I'm not your typical client, as they would say. So you're busy.
Yes, yes.
So it's really good that you've come
Good.
here to help give us an insight, really. Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I would say to any of your viewers, if you get the opportunity to be able to volunteer, because so many different charities and
Yeah.
places just need that support,
Yeah.
you know, with people, finances obviously,
Yeah.
and prayer.
Yes.
You know, I without having that connection with the churches in Guildford and not having that prayer, we stand alone.
Bless you. All I can say is I think your mother's prayers when you were a baby have been answered. And it's a blessing
Thank
to love to have another chat soon. Bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Noelle. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time on Face to Face.